Jess, what the heck is that? Hello again, team. It's Jess or JashiiCorrin, and welcome back for my January bullet journal setup. I'm super excited for January 2021, and I hope you guys are too. I just really love the start of a new year for that kind of fresh slate feeling that it gives us, when most people are hopeful and excited for the year ahead, ready to work on their goals and all that kind of stuff. To go with that, I've decided that my monthly theme for January is rainbows. For a lot of us, 2020 didn't really live up to the expectations for starting off the new decade, but as I said, new year, fresh start, let's get into it. As per usual, before we start the January setup though, we're just gonna have a look at how this month was going. My monthly theme for December was Christmas lights, and although I do really love the layouts I set up, this month was honestly kind of hectic, so there are still some spreads that haven't been filled in quite fully. Although some of these will get filled in a fair bit more before the end of the month, some others I'm just gonna leave be. Although I do love the aesthetic of full pages, I know it's not really that kind to myself to stress out over bullet journal imperfection. During December, I also did the 12 Days of Christmas video series, so you'll see that I have some layouts related to that in this flip through as well. Heading into the time lapse of my January setup though, just a reminder that any of the equipment I used is linked in the description box below. So going with a rainbow theme, you can of course expect a lot of colours, clouds, and naturally, rainbow doodles. In drawing out the pages of this monthly setup though, I was very aware that as January progresses, more colour will be added to these spreads. In particular, things like my mood, habits, and steps trackers are going to end up being very colourful. For that reason, I didn't want to go too crazy overboard with the decorations on those layouts, but for others in my setup, like the spread we have here, that's where I put the majority of my doodles. If you saw my 2021 bullet journal setup video, you'll know that for the first half of the year coming, I'm using the Vintage Bee notebook from Archer and Olive. One of the things I'm most excited about with getting back into a journal that has only white pages is doing quote pages as part of my monthly setups. This is something that I really enjoyed doing at the start of 2020, but when it came to the second half of the year, because I was in the Neapolitan journal and I'm a little bit fussy and I liked all of my pages within a month to be on the same kind of paper, and because I'd always put my cover page on the right hand side of a spread with two different paper types, it meant that in the Neapolitan journal I really didn't do a lot of quote pages at all. At least not quote pages that tied in with a monthly theme. As you can probably tell though, this quote page certainly does tie in with my January theme. I couldn't actually find who this one was originally said by, but what it says is, "A rainbow is a promise of sunshine after rain, calm after storms, joy after sadness, peace after pain, love after loss." Obviously this very much fits in with my theme, but it also fits in really well with the reason behind choosing the theme. I know that 2020 has not been a great year for a lot of people, and although there's technically nothing all that magical about January 1st, I know a lot of people are going to be very happy to see it. In terms of timing, from first touch of the pen to final erasings, the quote page took about 30 minutes, while my cover page took about 25. If you haven't seen one of my videos before telling you guys the amount of time it takes to actually achieve the spreads that I make, is something that I feel is valuable information. Especially with the time lapse being so much faster than real life, it can be kind of hard to judge how long it actually takes these spreads to be set up. The time taken on these pages was certainly increased by doing the 3D block lettering, which is something I'm not overly confident with yet, but I think it turned out looking pretty good. For all the black outlining and text that I have on this page, I used the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens, while the coloured sections were done with a combination of Tombow dual brush markers and Staedtler Triplus fineliners. As I mentioned, all of the equipment I use in this monthly setup is linked in the description box below, including the Helix circle maker that you just saw before. As far as bullet journal supplies I have outside of pens, this one is certainly one of my favourites. It made drawing in the rainbow doodles on this setup so much easier. I used the Tombows to do a gradient on the lettering for the January cover page, And then after this, it was on to the Make It Happen and Mood Tracker layouts. One of the ways that I tied all of the pages of my monthly setup together was by keeping the same simple border on every layout. Repeating elements like the same type of borders, doodles, and headers for each spread in any selection of pages does really well to help make them all look cohesive. This is also what I do with my colour palettes for each month, so using the same selection of colours for all of the pages in a month. I used to have a really hard time sticking with one colour palette for that many pages, but I found it became a lot easier when I started putting more thought into the colour palettes I was using. So in some cases making them a bit more complex, but really just making sure all the colours worked well together and they were colours I liked together. In terms of the pages we have here though, the Make It Happen layout took 22 minutes and the Mood Tracker took 13. If you hadn't seen it before, the Make It Happen layout is essentially a bucket list for the month, where I can write down things that I'm looking forward to, or, as the title suggests, things that I want to make happen. To do the headers on each of the pages in my January setup, I used a combination of simple cursive and all caps. This is similar to the header style I used in my 2021 Goals journal setup, but the cursive here is less stretched than in that one. I used the Stetlers to make a rainbow with the all caps, and left the cursive in black. You can see I have 9 main boxes in the middle of this one, to fill with the things I want to make happen in January. Now I just need to figure out what those things are. For the Mood Tracker, I again used the Helix Circle Maker to draw 8 concentric circles. This gave me 7 rings, which I can then fill with 7 colours of the rainbow. The more rings that I fill for any given day, the better my mood was. I then used my ruler to divide these concentric circles into 32 equal segments, so 31 for the days in January, and 1 for a key. Making sure to get my segments even is pretty important to me, which is why in the penciling in stage, I made sure to use a protractor to equally divide up my circle. Along with writing out the numbers for each day of the month and putting in my key, I also put a little quote at the bottom of the page that says, "When it rains, look for rainbows." The second half of this quote is, "When it's dark, look for stars," but that part didn't fit with the theme quite as much. This is one of the layouts that, as I mentioned before, is going to have a lot more colour when I start to fill it in, which is why the only colour I've put on my Mood Tracker at this stage is in the title. Over the page and we're on to my habits and steps trackers. These ones took 9 minutes and 13 minutes respectively. I'm using my tried and true layouts for these ones in January, where my habit tracker is just a vertical grid style, and my steps tracker is going to end up being a bar graph. I use icons to represent each of the habits I'm tracking, just because it saves on space, but from left to right we have waking up on time, having my multivitamin, having my AM medication and my PM medication, using my bullet journal throughout the day to check off my tasks, checking in with my goals bullet journal, doing some reading, doing a 10-minute tidy, doing my nightly skin routine, writing my checklist for the next day, and then getting to bed on time. For my steps tracker, as I said, this one's going to be a bar graph, so I'm going to have a horizontal bar for each day of the month that represents how many steps I did that day. The key for this one is just the numbers from 0 to 10 and then a plus symbol, and this represents how many thousands of steps. So 1 for 1,000 steps, 2 for 2,000, etc. These pages again are going to end up very colourful. So just like how I have a gradient running down the side of each page for the days of the week, each row on both of these trackers is going to be filled in with a colour of the rainbow, just cycling through the 7 colours. Flipping over though, we're on to the simplest page of my January setup, which is my before term 1 list. This one only took me 3.5 minutes, which makes sense because it's literally a title in a box. The first school term for 2021 starts on February 1st for my school. So to make sure I'm prepared as I can be for the term ahead, I wanted to have a space to write out all the things I need to get done. On the right hand side of the spread we have my gratitude log. This isn't something that I include every month, but I thought that with the rainbow theme in particular, it would be worthwhile having. Also, I've always wanted to try one of these sunbeam style layouts, and I thought it was a good excuse to do one. This was very much another layout where measuring first was important to me, because I wanted to make sure that those segments were the same size. I only actually ended up including 30 segments rather than 31, just because it was way easier in terms of measuring to do that many. If you think about it as a half circle, I had 180 degrees to work with, and 180 divided by 30 is a much nicer number than 180 divided by 31. Another thing I did to make this page look neater was make sure that all of those lines came out of a central point. So that was a dot that was in the center of the very left of the page. In terms of timing, this one took 12 minutes to set up, but to fill this one in, the idea is that for each of 30 days in January, I'll write one thing that I'm grateful for along one of the beams. Flipping over though, we have the return of the social media scheduler. This was a layout that I used to do every single month in my journal, but when I had my Neapolitan journal, I instead moved all of these trackers to the front and then ended up doing it on Notion. I've decided that for January, I want to bring this page back, but with some tweaks. Instead of just having it on a single page, I'm using the full spread for this one. I'm including mini calendars on one side for both January and February to mark in what days I'm going to be posting content and also what days I'm going to be doing other things, like filming, editing, that kind of stuff. Each of the different tasks is given an icon, which I have a key for at the start of my journal. So things like the little logo for wherever I'm posting content, a little video recorder for filming, a little camera for photo taking, that kind of stuff. I'm feeling really excited for my content schedule in January. I have things coming up like my 2020 flip through, the first iteration of our monthly Q&A, a look at the weekly dashboards that I'm going to be using for 2021, and a bunch of other stuff. If those sounded interesting to you, or if you enjoyed this video and wanted to see more like it, make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you don't miss when I post future videos. And for the final flip through, we have my quote and cover page, my Make It Happen page and mood tracker, habits and steps trackers, my before term 1 space, gratitude log, and my social media planner. As I said, I'm really excited for January and 2021, and I really hope you guys are too. I think this rainbow theme is just what I needed for next month. I'd love to know though, what themes are you guys doing for your January setups? Are you starting your first bullet journal in January, or have you been doing this for a while? Thank you for watching, team. If you liked today's video, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you wanted to see more from me, feel free to go check out one of my other videos. Until next time, bye!